Janmadyasya yato niviyat itaratascha tesu abhigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayaritartascha tesu abhigyaswarat.
Tene brahma hirdaya adikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha.
Tene brahma hridaya adikavaye mujanti jasuraya.
Tejo varimridam yata vinimayo yatra trisargomasya.
Tejo varimrida jata vinimayo jatra trisargomrasya.
Damna swena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality of Godhead,
O all-pervading personality of God,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth,
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the
truth,
primeval cause of all causes,
and the primeval cause of all causes,
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations,
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It is
him.
he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living
the
being.
original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion,
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
as one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of the water seen the fire, of land seen the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by reactions to the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual, although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who
Krishna,
is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental
which
abode,
is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma pujita kaitravudra,
Dharma prujita kaitavutra,
paramo nimatsaranam satam,
paramo nirmasaranam
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
Vedyam vastavam astra vastu,
Shivadam tapa trayon muvana.
Shivadam ta putroyam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavati
Kim va parir Ishvaraha.
Ishvara
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo Rudya Varudya
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshana.
Kritivi Shushushuvista
Completely reject all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material.
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest
which is
truth,
understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold
This
mystery.
beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva is maturity.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukhat amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukhamukhar amrita drav sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamayam,
muhur ahor raska bhuvibhavakaha.
Uhura hura sikabu vivavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam,
mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desire to Vedic
It
law.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was all relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrivantam Sakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hiryantaksto hi Bhadrani,
Dhyantasto Hyabha,
Vidonati Suhitsatam.
Vidurati Surisata.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
Lord,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone.
acts as a best-wishing friend,
Acts as his best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Praishwa Bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttama-shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloki
bhaktir bhavati naistiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nistiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he hears more
knowledge.
about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavad
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajas Tamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye cheta
Amalobhastayascha
etaranavidam
Chetetarana
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Tam Sattve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
One becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and as material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manas
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jaya.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are
the
wiped away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure
and
goodness,
they remain steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
become enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Granthi
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
sriyante chasya karmani
Kyante Chasya Karmani
ista evatmanishwari.
Tusta Evadmaneshwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the heart not of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material affection,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
enables them to come at once to the stage of Assumption Samadhi,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse number 15. Savai Bhagavato Raja
Savai Bhagavato Raja
Pandaveyo Maharata
Pandaveyo Maharata
Bala Kridana Kai Kridan
Bala Kridana Kai Kridam
Krishna Kridam Yadadade.
Krishna Kridam Ya Adari.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.41, it is stated that even a person who has failed in the proper discharge of yoga practice is given a chance to take birth in the house of devout brahmanas or in the houses of rich men like Kshatriya kings or rich merchants. But Maharaj Parikshit was more than that, because he had been a great devotee of the Lord since his previous birth, and as such he took his birth in an imperial family of the Kurus, and especially that of the Pandavas. So, from the very beginning of his childhood, he had the chance to know intimately the devotional service of Lord Krishna in his own family. The Pandavas, all being devotees of the Lord, certainly venerated family deities in the royal palace for worship. Children who appear in such families, fortunately, generally imitate such worship of the deities, even in the way of childhood play. By the grace of Lord Shri Krishna, we had the chance of being born in a Vaishnava family, and in our childhood we imitated the worship of Lord Krishna by imitating our father. Our father encouraged us in all respects to observe all functions such as the Ratha Yatra and the Dola Yatra ceremonies. Dola Yatra means holika, the holy ceremonies. And he used to spend money liberally for distributing prasada to us children and our friends. Our spiritual master, who also took his birth in a Vaishnava family, got all inspirations from his great Vaishnava father, Thakur Bhaktivinod. That is the way of all lucky Vaishnava families. The celebrated Mirabai was a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna as the great lifter of Govardhana Hill. The life history of many such devotees is almost the same because there is always symmetry between the early lives of all great devotees of the Lord. According to Jiva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit must have heard about the childhood pastimes of Lord Krishna at Vrindavana, for he used to imitate the gopis, and with his young playmates. According to Sridhar Swami, Maharaj Parikshit used to imitate the worship of the family deity by elderly members. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti also confirms the viewpoint of Jiva Goswami. So accepting either of them, Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit was naturally inclined to Lord Krishna from his very childhood. He might have imitated either of the above-mentioned activities, and all of them established his great devotion from his very childhood, a symptom of a Mahabhagavata. Such Mahabhagavatas are called Nitya Siddhas, or souls liberated from birth, but there are also others who may not be liberated from birth, but who develop a tendency for devotional service by association, and they are called sadhana siddhas. There is no difference between the two in the ultimate issue, and so the conclusion is that everyone can become a sadhana siddha, a devotee of the Lord, simply by association with pure devotees. The concrete example is our great spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni. In his previous life, he was simply a boy of a maidservant, but through association with great devotees, he became a devotee of the Lord of his own, unique in the very history of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship the Lord by imitating the worship of the family deity. So, in the 6th chapter, 41st verse, there are detailed explanations of what happens to the yogi who dies after a short term of practice of yoga, and what happens to a yogi who dies after a long practice of yoga. So it says, Prapya punya kritam lokan usitva sasvati sama suchinam shimatam yehe yoga brasto vijayate. So it says, the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. This is 6th chapter, 41st verse. The Prabhupada says in the purport, the unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One has fallen after very little progress, and one has fallen after a long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahmana, Vaishnava, or of aristocratic merchants. So that's point one. Yeah. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements, are allowed by the grace of the Lord to make full utilization of their material propensities. And after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteousness or aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. Okay, so then the next verse, 42, says, or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world. Okay, so in the purport, Prabhupada says, birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharyas or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupada Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord, and both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. Okay, so this is a very nice explanation by Prabhupada. It gives us an idea of the great opportunity of the human form of life for self-realization, to understand our relationship with Krishna and go back to Godhead. And if we fail, nothing is lost, because we'll be elevated to higher planets and then come back to the earth again after a prolonged period of time and be born in families like a wealthy family, and we have a chance to continue devotional service. Or if we, after a long time of performing devotional service, fell down because of some allurement to material nature, then we'll very quickly take birth in a family of pure devotees and revive our Krishna consciousness from previous life right away in early youth, and practice Krishna consciousness by imitating our elders. So that's all positive positive knowledge. However, this proves that transcendental endeavors never go in vain. Transcendental endeavors never go in vain. Prabhupada explains this in the next verse, text 43. He says, on taking such a birth, this is the devotee who fell down after a long practice of devotional service. So he takes birth in a family of pure devotees. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. So we do see exceptional children like this, that right from the beginning of their life, they want to play mridanga, they want to chant, they want to dance, and that's a sign that that particular soul was already very elevated in the previous life. King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the whole world, and since his time, this planet has been known among the demigods as Bharatvarsha. Formerly, it was known as Lilavrita Varsa. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection. Now he's talking about King Bharata. But failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in the family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jada Bharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered by the greatest transcendentalist. He was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain by the grace of the Lord. Transcendentalists get repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so this is good news for all of us because our activities in Krishna consciousness never go in vain. The Lord never forgets what we've done for Him. Nehabhikramanastasti pratijayana vidyate swapam apyasya dharmasya trayato mahato bayat. So, whatever we do in Krishna consciousness, it's never lost. It's a permanent asset that stays with us so that in our next life, we start from the point where we stopped. We don't start from zero. So therefore, Krishna consciousness is a cumulative process. It's progressive and cumulative. Whatever we've done in this life to serve Krishna, we start from that point in our next life. In other words, we don't have to start from zero every time. So another important point in this purport is that from very childhood, one is trained by the parents in celebrating pastimes of the Lord, or imitating, in a sense, the Lord's pastimes. This is a symptom of Mahabhagavat devotees. Like, for example, in the Krishna book, chapter 30, entitled Krishna's Hiding from the Gopis, it's said that the gopis were absorbed in thought of Krishna. They experienced even loss of memory, and with dampened eyes, in other words, their eyes were wet with tears of love, they began to see the very pastimes of Krishna. His beautiful talks with them, his embracing, kissing, and other activities. Being so attracted to Krishna, they imitated his dancing, his walking, and his smiling, as if they themselves were Krishna. Due to Krishna's absence, they all became crazy. Each one of them told the others that she was Krishna himself. Soon they all assembled together and chanted Krishna's name very loudly as they moved from one part of the forest to another, searching for him. This is after Krishna walks away from the Rasalila dance with Radharani, so the gopis are looking for him. Then later on it says, after searching for Krishna here and there, the gopis became fatigued, and then they began to talk like mad women. They could satisfy themselves then. They could satisfy themselves only by imitating the different pastimes of Krishna. One of them imitated the demon Putana, and one of them imitated Krishna and sucked her breast. One gopi imitated a hand-driven cart, and another gopi lay down beneath the cart and threw up her legs, touching the wheels of the cart, as Krishna did to kill the demon Sakatasura. One gopi imitated child Krishna and lay down on the ground, and one gopi became the demon Trinavrata and carried the small child Krishna by force into the sky. And one of the gopis began to imitate Krishna while he was attempting to walk, ringing his ankle bells or her ankle bells. Two gopis, ringing his ankle bells. Two gopis imitated Krishna and Balaram, and many others imitated their cowherd boyfriends. One gopi assumed the form of Bakatsura, and another forced her to fall down as the demon Bakatasura did when he was killed. Similarly, another gopi defeated Vatsasura. Just as Krishna used to call his cows by their different names, so the gopis imitated him, calling the cows by their respective names. One of the gopis began to play on a flute, and another praised her the way Krishna's boyhood friends praised him while he played on his flute. One of the gopis took another gopi in her shoulders, just as Krishna used to take his boyfriends. Absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, the gopi who was carrying her friend began to boast that she was Krishna herself. All of you just see my movement. One of the gopis raised her hand with her covering garments and said, "Now don't be afraid of the torrents of rain and severe hurricanes. I'll save you." In this way, she imitated the lifting of Govardhan Hill. One gopi forcibly put her feet on the head of another gopi and said, "You rascal Kaliya, I shall punish you severely. You must be punished. You must leave this place. I have descended to this earth to punish all kinds of miscreants." Another gopi told her friends, "Just see, the flames of the forest fire are coming to devour us. Please close your eyes, and I shall immediately save you from this imminent danger." So we see the only way the gopis who have extreme love for Krishna can placate their feelings of separation from the Lord and not seeing the Lord is to imitate his pastimes. Right? So these are different ecstatic feelings experienced by pure devotees. So, another point in this purport is that such Mahabhagavatas, such as Maharaj Parikshit, are called Nitya Siddhas, or souls liberated from birth. So, why? Because already in their previous life, they were very highly elevated devotees. They might have made some little mistake, and therefore they take birth again in a family of transcendentalists. And right away, they start from the point where they left off in the previous life. And they're recognized as being eternally liberated because of their particular acumen or skill of always remembering Krishna and always holding fast to Krishna's lotus feet in their mind. But then there are others also. Okay, that means that maybe there are others that are not Nityasiddhas, right? Who don't take up immediately, or not born in such elevated families, to take up immediately where they left off in the previous life. So Prabhupada says, but there are others also who may not be liberated from birth, but who develop a tendency for devotional service by association. And they are called sadhana siddhas. There's no difference between the two in the ultimate issue. And so the conclusion is that everyone can become a sadhana siddha, perfect through devotional service, through following the rules and regulations of spiritual life. And so it says, there is no difference between the two in the ultimate issue, and so the conclusion is that everyone can become a sadhana siddha, a devotee of the Lord, simply by association with pure devotees. That's what happened to Prahlad Maharaj. He was, instead of playing frivolously with his friends, he collected, what it says here is that one can become Krishna conscious even if they're not born in the family of transcendentalists. And by by associating with pure devotees, they can attain the same position of being a Nitya Siddha. The concrete example is our great spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni. In his previous life, he was simply a boy of a maidservant. But through association with great devotees, he became a devotee of the Lord of his own standard, unique in the history of devotional service. So that opens the possibility for any of us, if we associate with genuine devotees, to attain such heights of spiritual perfection. And there is a very interesting verse in the 10th chapter. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It says, that it's impossible to comprehend the greatness of Krishna and his opulences. The senses of the individual soul are limited and do not permit him to understand the totality of Krishna's affairs. Still, the devotees try to understand Krishna, but not on the principle that they will be able to understand Krishna fully at any specific time or in any state of life. Rather, the very topics of Krishna are so relishable that they appear to the devotees as nectar. Thus the devotees enjoy them. In discussing Krishna's opulences and his diverse energies, the pure devotees take transcendental pleasure. Therefore they want to hear and discuss them. Krishna knows that living entities do not understand the extent of his opulences. He therefore agrees to state only the principal manifestations of his different energies. So, therefore, by association with pure devotees, one develops a taste to hear about Krishna. That's why Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book. Why? Because rather than jumping immediately to the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagvatam, but still he gave a taste of that 10th canto by writing the Krishna book early on, so that devotees can have an experience, an oral experience of transcendental life in the spiritual world. And the symptom of the gopis is that they are always speaking about Krishna and remembering his pastimes and even enacting them. So this is called Amrita, or nectar. And it says, now as far as Amritam, nectar, is concerned, any narration or statement concerning Krishna is just like nectar. And this nectar can be perceived by practical experience. Modern stories, fiction, and histories are different from the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, in that one will tire of hearing mundane stories, but one never tires of hearing about Krishna. It is for this reason only that the history of the whole universe is replete with references to the pastimes of the incarnations of Godhead. The Puranas are histories of bygone ages that relate the pastimes of the various incarnations of the Lord. In this way, the reading matter remains forever fresh, despite repeated readings. So this is what we're doing every day. We're hearing about Krishna's transcendental pastimes and about his transcendental devotees. If we do this on a regular basis, this becomes like a flow of nectar to our ears. And we're not satisfied at all. We want to hear more and more, so that we can keep tasting the nectar of Krishna and his devotees' transcendental pastimes. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions?
So Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas.
Yeah.
So both of them are just basically gradual elevation with maybe multiple lifetimes. In case of sadhana, Nitya Siddhas, they were almost towards the end of their perfection, so they start their life itself.
Well, the issue is hearing from a pure devotee. So, when we're reading Prabhupada's purports, we're hearing from a pure devotee. And the more we hear, the more nectarian it becomes. You see, because every day we're learning something new. Every day there's discovery.
Yeah.
This discovery is something that is attractive to a devotee. And therefore, one makes the effort to come on time and not miss even a word. Because this is something special. You cannot get this in any university or school. That is, learning about the intimate pastimes of the Lord with His devotees. Learning how to become a devotee, right? So this desire to hear is the most important thing in the devotee's life. Then what happens? Then one develops this culture of devotion. One wants to always find different ways to serve the Lord. So, and everybody has a certain penchant or certain talent. So Prabhupada said it takes time to develop some talent. But if you use that talent in Krishna's service, that is the perfection of your life. Right? So one person might have one talent, another person has another talent that they've developed over time. If they use it in Krishna's life, in this lifetime, and actually engage in practical devotional service, then they become enlivened. Right? There's an excitement every day of hearing and chanting and getting more inspiration, and then developing different skills that they can use in Krishna's service. It's a dynamic process. It's never static. Whereas the Mayavadis, they're trying to cut off all that stuff. Right? They think that by stopping activity, they can attain perfection. And the devotees become more active. And we have the example of the Goswamis. They were staying awake sometimes 23 hours a day. They were so excited by their hearing and chanting and writing that they lost the desire to eat and sleep. Right? I mean, they were eating a little bit and they were sleeping a little bit, but very minimal, so that they can increase the hearing and chanting and serving. So you cannot attain that position artificially. It's by inspiration. Now, Prabhupada gives the example of he says Napoleon was so excited to conquer that he would only sleep 2 hours a night. And he'd wake up, and when he'd wake up, he would be surrounded by 20 or more secretaries, and he'd start dictating to them. You do this, you do that. We have to send our soldiers on the Eastern Front. They need this thing, they need that thing. He was excited. You see, so one can get excited materially, also by increasing money, increasing prestige and all these things. But imagine if you develop that excitement to become Krishna conscious. Then you're you're not at all interested in mundane things anymore. You just can't get enough of Krishna consciousness. That's the position of a Nitya Siddha, eternally liberated devotee. Haribol. So that's explained in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 18, that we went over before. One never tires